In today's video, we're going to be going over the Iron 883 versus the Harley Davidson Fat Bob with the 114 cubic inch engine. And it starts right now. If you've been following the channel for a little while now, you might know that I first purchased the Harley Davidson Iron 883. And this here happens to be the 2013 year model. I also have more recently purchased in the last few months the Fat Bob with the 114 engine. And today I want to do a versus video. I know these are not similar bikes. In a lot of ways they're very different motorcycles, but they are both cruisers. And there are a lot of people that may be in the market for trying to figure out, do they want the Sportster line or the new Softail model? And that's hopefully what I'm going to be able to determine here. First of all, let's get out on the Fat Bob since it happens to be in the back, and then we'll come back and we'll get on the Iron and we'll go over the pros and cons of each and see which one wins. Oh, what a beautiful day to be out riding. I hope you guys are enjoying your ride as well. But before we get into the specifics of this review, I wanted to mention the fact that I love both the Iron 883 and this Fat Bob. They're very close. I just love them both tremendously. And that's why I thought this would be a fun review. Head-to-head contest between the two of my favorite motorcycles so far. So also to keep in scope of what I'm going to be talking about here, as I'm going to actually give a number rating on what I believe should be given to each of these motorcycles for a few different factors. And this is primarily concerning the cruiser line. So any cruiser, whether it be a touring bike or kind of the large power bikes like the Softail lineup is nowadays, or the smaller Sportsters, that's what we're talking about here. So if I talk about speed and power and things like that, I'm not comparing this to a top-end, racing track sports bike or something like that. This is all relative to other cruisers. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sound. As you can tell, this has a beautiful sound on this motorcycle here, but that is largely due in part to the upgraded exhaust system that I have on here. I do have the Vance & Hines short shots, which I'm hoping to actually come up with a good video on in the near future about showing the exact sound from different angles, but look forward to that to come. The sound on this motorcycle is great, but I'm not going to rate it based off of my upgraded exhaust. I'm going to rate it based off of the stock exhaust. Now, hopefully I can find a clip of a sound and let you hear it right here. But if I was to give a rating from 1 to 10, I would give this a 5 out of 10, rated based off of the stock exhaust sound. A lot of people relate it to the sound of a sewing machine. I think that's quite accurate. It's pretty terrible. As you get on it and you get up in the RPMs, it does sound better, but idling and at lower RPMs, and even at higher RPMs, it's just not, it doesn't sound great. That being said, taking that into account, that you can upgrade for a relatively cheap cost. I believe the Vance & Hines short shots are somewhere around 500 bucks. Then if you either do the installation yourself or you have to pay someone a little bit more to do that install for you, it's not too bad. So that brings us to our next item here as we're getting on the highway, which is highway ability. That is the technical term of how capable a motorcycle is on the highway. No, but seriously, the ability to really get out and enjoy this motorcycle on the highway if I was to give that a number between 1 and 10, it would have to be an 8. Now, that's pretty high, you might say, considering there are touring bikes out there that can do it much better. Yes, there are definitely touring bikes out there that can do a much better job of giving you comfort on the highway, but this is as close, in my opinion, that you can get to a touring bike comfort level on the highway without going to the huge bagger, large fairing motorcycle, which I'm not a huge fan of myself. I have nothing against people who do enjoy that. It's just not my interest. So hopefully you can hear me well here. I've got a new microphone, trying it out. But this is, you know, I'm cruising along here at 72 miles per hour. If I wanted to get on it, I'm in 6th gear right now, 65 miles per hour. I can get on it and pass somebody if I need to, without even downshifting. Now, if I wanted to go faster, I could definitely downshift into 5th. What's going on, guys? Lots of people out today on a beautiful day riding motorcycles. Love it. So that's what I would say I would give this motorcycle as far as highway comfort. And the reason for that is it is very solid on the highway. Part of that is due to the heavy nature of this motorcycle here. It's not as heavy as the previous generation, but the way they redid this softail frame, it is very rigid and solid. You feel secure going at high speeds, no matter if you got wind, if you're turning at high speeds, or whatever the case may be. You really get a good solid feel for it on the highways. Also, you don't feel like, one thing I'll touch base a little bit on a negative on the Iron 883 is it's only got 5 gears. In this motorcycle you got a 6th gear, allows you to cruise without having to rattle your handlebars or your foot pegs. So it's very comfortable in that way. I, of course, do not have any sort of windshield or fairing, so this is kind of relative. You know, if you had those things, I could definitely put that on here. I've considered it, but I just like the clean look of a more naked bike look. And so, anyway, 8 out of 10, I think, is really solid. You got a comfortable seat on here, and we're going to get into the comfort on that side of things here in just a second. But let's get off the highway so that you can hear me a little bit better. Okay, now that we're off the highway, I wanted to show you a few little extra features that I like about this motorcycle that is not on the Iron 883. I'll go ahead and show you those as I park up here, and then we'll get on to the rest of the list. You have an analog RPM gauge, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's not necessary, but I really like having it for times when I want to check my RPMs, and I like it in the analog form. Really like how they did that there. Also, as you see here in the digital portion, you have your miles per hour, you have your fuel gauge here showing how much gas you have left. It'll come across in those bars across the top there when it's full. I'm getting kind of low there. But it also shows you that R stands for remaining miles left is 59, so it kind of shows you a guess as to how many more miles you have left. So that's really nice. On the left here of the controls, you have a button that you can press to cycle through other options, such as the time that you see there. You can show a digital RPM readout, and you have your total miles on the motorcycle there, as well as your trip A, trip B, and back to remaining. So some of the cool features that I like there are that. Another thing that's pretty cool about this motorcycle here, as far as technology goes, is right here you have a little USB port. But yeah, that port right there is used to keep your phone charged, so that if you're out on a long trip, you can have power. So pretty cool little feature. Not, again, something that's a must-have, but it's pretty nice to know about. Okay, so the next item that I wanted to go over is the comfort level of the motorcycle. As for the Fat Bob, I would give this one an 8 out of 10. And of course, these are all stock ratings that I'm giving these out of, and you can make adjustments as needed. You could probably make this more comfortable or less comfortable. But the stock seat on this motorcycle, I really enjoy. It's I believe it's got like a gel. It's the right amount of firmness, but not too firm. It's comfortable. It does well for long rides. Also, on all of the Softail models, I really think that the mono shock that they have in the back there is a really good one. It's a really high quality shock. But in particular on this bike, on the Fat Bob, the front fork shocks, reverse forks on the front there, they're really good. And I've heard this from all sorts of reviewers. It's not just me that says this, but you really get a solid feel when you're in the turns, but yet it's not, you know, banging the crap out of you when you're driving down through bumpy area as well. So as far as comfort level goes, I really think that this one is high up on the notch. If there weren't touring motorcycles, I would probably give this a 10 out of 10, but obviously you're going to have some more nice features on comfort when it comes to the touring motorcycles that you just don't have quite on this motorcycle here. So that's why I dropped it down to an 8. But if you're out of the touring models, this is, I believe, one of the top motorcycles for comfort out on the road. And you know, for the type of riding that I do a little bit on the highway, going in between some of the small towns up here where I live on the Central Coast, but I really don't do a lot of highway riding, so this is really hitting the sweet spot for me. Now let's move on to power. This bike has great power. I have to give this motorcycle a 9 out of 10. And the reason I give it a 9 out of 10 is this has a great engine on this motorcycle. The 114 cubic inch equates to, I believe it's somewhere around 1868, give or take 1 or 2 cc's. Is what it equates to in cc's. But the power that you get out of here, the delivery, it's all primarily, as all Harleys do, the power is in the lower end of the motorcycle's rev range, and that's where I like it. That's my preference. I don't ride at high speeds doing wheelies, you know, crazy stuff. Not that you need high horsepower to do wheelies. You really need the torque for that. But I really feel like for my desire, just cruising around town, having that low end torque is where it's fun. You know, if I had to get up to, you know, 6,000 RPMs to really enjoy my bike everywhere, I really don't think I would enjoy it as much. But man, if you want to get on it, it's got that too. So I really love the way they did the 114 engine. Like I said, the power's down low where I want it. I believe it has 118 foot-pounds of torque, which is nothing to sniff at. Now this is a heavy motorcycle, so 118 on here compared to 118 on a motorcycle half this weight, which I believe a lot of sports bikes are about half the weight of this motorcycle. It's different. So you're not talking sport bike level feel, but you're talking power cruiser is what I would term this as. So it gives you, in my opinion, more power than you would really need. Especially for safety situations, if you need to get up and out of the way of somebody, you've got that when you need it. But it's not, the 107 engine has been defined as being a little bit more, I almost want to say jerky, and I'm talking very minor difference, okay? But it's a little more quick to accelerate or change speeds, as opposed to the 114. It's got a longer stroke, and it's just a little bit more, it's still quick. Obviously it's quicker than the 107 as far as you know, getting up to 0 to 60 time, but I feel like it's a more comfortable experience that you don't get jerked around as much. It's just a little smoother. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a little smoother in the 114 with more power. So getting that smooth ride on your cruise, oh man, I love the power on this motorcycle, and that's where I give it a 9 out of 10. There are more powerful options if you upgrade, but as far as power to weight ratio goes, I believe the Softail line has one of, if not the top power to weight ratio of any cruiser out there. Now, I'm not talking about crazy things like the Boss Haas, you know, with something like, I don't know, 1,200 horsepower ridiculousness. you know, huge crazy bikes. I'm talking about, you know, bikes that consumers would actually typically ride around town and enjoy, not something just to take to a show and flex. So yeah, I really love the power on it. 9 out of 10 for sure. Next on the list though is handling, and this is where I give the highest score to this motorcycle. Now again, this is among cruisers. You know, cruisers are not known to be the most proficient at handling compared to other motorcycles, but among cruisers I give this a 10 out of 10. And the reason I do, this motorcycle in particular has the Fat Bob out of the Softails, has the rake set up in such a way, I can't remember the number, I'll try to put it here on the screen as to what the rake angle is, but it allows you to really lean this bike, and I mean with definite ease. Okay, and just to hark on the other point about comfort, I'm going across a really rough road here, and this bike, I don't feel uncomfortable at all. You can probably hear it a little bit in my voice because it is going to bump me a little bit, just like anything would. But going across a really rough road here, I'm comfortable. I've got one hand on the wheel. That's the thing. This thing feels solid, and that's where it comes into the handling. I feel so much more confident on this motorcycle when it comes to handling. I'm talking about in turns. I'm talking about on straightaways. There are better motorcycles out there for going on long distance highway rides. Some of the other Softails, the ones that have the skinnier front tire, are going to do a little better on the highway. But when it comes to doing any sort of turns, like I'm just barely touching this thing here, okay, just to kind of show you. I'm not even really hard. I'm pushing it with the end of my fingertips. This motorcycle just responds really quickly, and that's partly due to that rake that you have there, that front rake, but it's also to do with it's a little higher up off the ground, so it has a better lean angle for a cruiser. Again, I want to say it's something like 31 degrees on one side and 30 on the other. It's somewhere on there. I'll try to put that up here on the screen as well, so you have that exact number. But it's the best lean angle out of all the Softails on the Harley Davidson lineup. So it's got really good handling in that way. So doing twisties and things like that, this is going to be kind of your best option for a cruiser out there. There may be one out there that I don't know of. I'm definitely don't claim to be an expert on all motorcycles, but among Harleys, I can tell you this is where it's at when it comes to handling. 10 out of 10. So last on our list is safety, and this kind of entails a lot of the things that we've talked about. You know, handling comes into play there, as well as some of the technology pieces on here. But when it comes to safety, I have to give this one a pretty high rating as well, and I'd give this one about an 8 out of 10. And the reason for that is the 114 version comes standard with anti-lock brakes, and I highly recommend, if you can get anti-lock brakes on your motorcycle, to get it. I believe the 107 version of this does not, but you can have it added. Anti-lock brakes are great for a lot of different reasons. Some people will say you can handle doing your brakes manually more efficiently than anti-lock brakes can, and in some instances, yes, you can. A person can do a better job at braking than a machine when it comes to anti-lock, but that's when a person is highly skilled and has nothing else blocking his attention. The safety benefits that you get from taking your mind off of trying to make sure you do the perfect braking in a disastrous emergency situation is highly important. And it's very important. I think people need to understand the fact that when you're on a motorcycle, if you lock your brakes, it's much more detrimental than in a car. Obviously, you lose traction when you lock your brakes and you start skidding. But in addition to that, on a motorcycle, one of the things that keeps you going, that keeps the motorcycle upright, is that motion of the spinning wheel. If you've ever held a bicycle wheel on the two different bars, if you've ever done that experiment and you try to turn it, make it go sideways, it pushes back and it wants to be straight up and down. That's what's happening on your motorcycle. It wants to, at speed, be in a upright position. That's why it's more difficult to push it into a lean. But when you lock that wheel, you take that away immediately. And if you're in a situation where you're trying to brake in an emergency and then you lose your natural ability to stay upright, that can be a disastrous combination. So anti-lock brakes on this motorcycle are really awesome. So that is part of what gives it such a high safety rating. Some of the other things, the power, being able to get out of people's way, the handling, being able to maneuver quickly in the case of an emergency, those things play into it. But also the rigidity and the way they designed this frame, it's one of those things that's hard to explain. You kind of just have to feel it. A lot of people explain riding the Dynas as it flexes a lot, turning it just doesn't feel, you don't feel as confident moving it around. It's kind of like it doesn't really want to. But on this motorcycle, I'm telling you, it gives you all the confidence in your turns. You feel like where you turn it, where you point it, that's where it's going to go, and it's not going to go squirrely on you. So I really like the safety on that, as well as the security features, which are kind of along those lines, you know, safety of your motorcycle anyway, and getting stolen. It does have an alarm system. You know, one of the other features that I forgot to mention on the technology piece is this has a keyless key fob that you just keep in your pocket. You turn it on and off. Those are some nice features that make it a little bit more difficult to steal that with the alarm. You also have the ability to lock your forks, different things like that. Great motorcycle. I really love the Fat Bob here. And one last thing that I want to consider when showing the difference between these two, that I'm not going to give you the number on here, but I want to hear what you guys give the number, because this is completely subjective. Each person feels differently about this, but that is the looks and style of the motorcycle. And now some people may claim that that's not really that important. You know, the looks, you know, it's all about the other features. I highly disagree. If you're using a motorcycle for practical means, you need something, it's just the best option for you to get around. Maybe looks aren't as important for you, but if you're doing this for fun, if this is a hobby, which most people, I would say, at least in the United States, have that opinion, then looks is important. You want it to be cool. This is supposed to be fun, something interesting, and I feel like looks are very important. So I'm going to put in my comment down below what I would rate the looks and style of this, but I want to hear what you guys say. But now, let's get back to the garage. We'll pull out the Iron 883, give it a run, and we'll see what we can give it on its score.